I gotta say that I really dislike when people are comparing what's happening in Britain with communism, especially with the Soviet Union. And the reason that I hate it is because it's incorrect. You see, my parents actually lived through that system and they had a lot of stories to share. But also, I benefited from the communist culture for a couple of years of my life. Even after communism went down, the culture still lingered for a couple more decades. And I want to point out that, yeah, like Britain is not communist. It goes way beyond what even the Soviet Union was doing. Not just because they have the technology to do it, but at least the Soviet Union, for instance, had like a very strict code of conduct. Like in many of the satellite states of the USSR, you actually had like ideological crimes. And you open one of those law books, and it wasn't any ambiguous thing. Like you actually knew what you are and aren't allowed to say. Meanwhile, in Britain, like they are making legislation as if it's the terms of service of a social media company. It's like, what is legal to say? Well, we don't know, because they use the term harmful but legal. Right? Like even that's a thing now. It's like, okay, it's legal, but it's harmful. Who gets to decide what's harmful? Well, the government, of course, right? And this is why people are complaining about the two-tier care thing. It's like, well, it's kind of like a medieval society. One rule for the aristocrats and one rule for the peasantry. Like if you happen to be with the aristocrat class, well, you get more leeway. You get smaller punishment for the same crime. Like, for instance, the Prime Minister of Scotland, right? Like, he can go on and have a very racist speech, and then nothing happens to him. But meanwhile, if you're like just some random schmuck and you make an edgy joke on Facebook, well, you can get in trouble. And so here's an article that talks about the new legislation that they're pushing, right? So like they're still not happy with the amount of laws that they have, that they still think that there is much work to be done. In my opinion, they should just petition Elon Musk to go ahead with Neuralink and to just be able to read the thoughts of random people, just drill a chip into their brain. And once the government can actually see what the person is thinking, then maybe they will be happy. Although the more I think about it, probably not, because like, what if the person has some subconscious thoughts? Like what if like the surface level thinking isn't complying with the government, but like subconsciously he may think that, for instance, voting Labour is a bad idea. So like the government has to know, right? So look at this, right? The United Kingdom government's crime and policing bill poses a formidable threat to free speech in the UK. The bill, which is currently at the committee stage in the House of Commons, promises to keep users safe. Again, like the government job is not just to make sure that you have private property anymore and to protect you from foreign states. No, like the government is literally your mommy. Like mommy has to keep you safe every single time. And it's not just like physically safe, it's emotionally safe. Like until the culture of safetyism goes away, until people realize that the very word safetyism causes a inane disgust, until that happens, you will get more of this, right? So like what does the government want to do? Well, it wants to keep people safe by giving courts new powers to issue respect orders. These orders are potentially so draconian and wide-ranging, according to critics, that they could well end up being used for different purposes, including silencing anyone who says anything online that the authorities disapprove of. They don't mention here because they focus on the silencing part, but they can also force you to do something. Like, this is bewildering because in most societies, right, usually the government can force you to either pay a fine or go to prison, right? They cannot force you to do work. Like, for instance, if I have a contract with you and I say that I will build a fence for you, and then I choose not to follow the contract, the government is going to either make me pay damages for you, or it's just going to take assets from my house, sell them, and give you the body, right, for like the breach of contract and to pay for damages because you didn't have the fence built. But they can't force me to actually build the fence, right? It's the same thing in the United States. You can't force the bakery to bake the cake because that's slavery. Like philosophically speaking, right? Like you can't force a person to do a job that they don't want to do. You can put them in prison, you can give them a fine, you can force them to take something down, but like you can't really force them to create something. Well, apparently, Britain, it's like, all right, hold on. We're no longer doing the old ways, right? Like we're doing something new. So like theoretically, what this means is that if you write something online, especially now with the British habit of doxing yourself, right? Because every single Brit likes the national sport of doxing themselves. If you're in Britain or in China and you use the internet, kind of hard to tell the difference which country you're in. But now that you dox yourself, everything you say, even if it's legal, right? Even if it's something that other people would say by now, all the police has to do is to go to a judge and ask the judge, it's like, do you think that this person is causing public distress? So like something very vague, right? Like what the fuck is public distress? It's like an LGBT group going around in a LGBT parade, right? Are they causing public distress? I mean, I guess it depends, right? Like in some neighborhoods they might, and basically like back in the day they definitely did. So now I guess like the judge can decide, well, this group is causing public distress, but like should I hit them with this or not? Like do you see how subjective the enforcement can be? Do you see the way that it can be abused? Like I mean the only way you can believe that this is not going to be abused is only if you replace judges with AI. And like you actually know how the artificial intelligence thinks, what its priorities are, right? But like all you need is a corrupt judge or an ideologically possessed judge, and you have tyranny. Like there will be certain groups that, like for instance, perfect example, right? In Britain, you see a lot of the time Muslims praying in the streets. Now that makes no logical sense because like they have a lot of mosques in Britain. It's not like it's a foreign nation, right? And they have no place to pray. The reason they pray in the streets is to make a public statement, right? Now, most people have noticed that usually the cops don't crack down on that, even if they're praying in places that they're not allowed. Now, J.D. Vance from the United States came out and pointed out that, well, actually, you know, there are places in Europe where a Bible preacher can get arrested or in trouble for preaching. And I have seen the videos on social media, right? Now, again, I'm not a Christian. I don't give a fuck, you know. And I also think it's kind of cringe in 2025 to go and to preach on the street. But, like, the same rule should apply to everyone, right? Like, it's not about, like, whether you allow people to practice their religion on the street or not. It's like, make a rule and stick with it. Either no one is allowed to do it or everyone is allowed to do it. Like, that would be the fair thing, right? But, as we saw, like, enforcement is what matters. It doesn't matter, like, what laws you have. Is enforcement. And in a nation where enforcement is the problem, making such a legislation is incredibly dangerous for freedom. Although, you know, I kind of have to take it back because we're talking about the United Kingdom. Like, what freedom are we discussing, right? And so, all they have to do now is, like, someone posts something online. They can say, well, it caused, like, public outrage. And they can go to a judge and they can force that person to take it down. Or they can force that person to apologize. Or they can force that person to write something else. I'm not going to be surprised if it happens, right? Like, you may have a person that's forced to take down and then, like, have one of those corporate diversity messages. You know, I changed my mind and I actually realized that diversity is a good thing and blah, 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 blah. We'll see if I'm right or not, right? Because, like, now this bill is currently being discussed. Like, it's a negotiation. So we don't know if it's going to pass or not. And more importantly, we don't know how it's going to be enforced or not. I mean, maybe the judges have common sense. That's a possibility. Kind of rare in Britain, right? But maybe the judges are going to have... I doubt it. I don't think it will have common sense. And again, like, the very idea that you shouldn't cause, like, any type of public distress. Why, though? Like, isn't that the whole purpose of protesting, right? It's like, is there a single type of protest, actually, that doesn't cause some level of public distress? Anyway, it's going to be interesting. People are saying Reform UK is going to save them. Well, it depends how many people think that and how many people actually act on that, right? Because the way it works in Europe, you have a multi-party system. It seems to me, I may be wrong, but this is how it seems, that every single party agrees with this shit. And so, in order for Reform UK to actually be able to repeal legislation and to actually be able to govern, they would need to win 50.1% of the vote. Like more than half of the nation. And take into account that Britain is not a democracy in the way people think, right? Like just because like half the population would vote for a party, like even if that were to happen, right? Like let's say half of British people would vote reform of that, okay? The way that the votes are being distributed, the way that each vote goes to what seat, it may mean that it's not enough, right? So like the system is designed in such a way that even if they were to manage to get so many votes, it would still not be able to work in their favor. And also the mentality in Europe is that they brand parties that are against this authoritarianism, they brand them as far right. It doesn't matter what their ideology is or economics or anything like that. No, like unless you're like on board with mass migration and with laws like this, you're far right. And then they form what it's called the cordon sanitaire. Basically, we don't negotiate with the far right, we don't do business with the far right, we don't talk with the far right. And so even if they do get in power, no one wants to make alliances with them, no one talks with them. And so like the only way that anything can change is if you have like young people getting into the current political parties that aren't Reform UK. Like for instance, young people joining the Tories, young people joining Labour, young people joining like some of the established parties. And try to keep their power level down until they get into positions of power, right? And they would have like some charisma and they would be able to actually put money into where their mouth is. And then they may have something to say. Because here's the thing, right? Whenever something like this happens, I notice Westerners get outraged, right? Like, how is it possible? Why is it happening? Blah, blah, blah. But the question is like, how much money do Westerners pay in order to have their freedoms protected? Like, how much percentage of their total money goes to organizations that protect freedom? Because here's the thing that Westerners don't understand. Like, I'm sorry to say this, but like, America does have a point when it says that money is free speech. Every single politician is interested in freedom and liberty. The only question is like, are they interested to restrict it or are they interested to expand it? And usually, they're interested in where the money is. There are a lot of people paying good money to restrict freedoms. And the problem is there aren't that many people using money in order to defend freedom. That's also important, right? So, unless there is going to be a culture where people are... And by the way, when I say money, I don't necessarily mean like going to a politician and putting money in his pocket. Like, there are other ways to do it. You know, like funding initiatives, funding organizations, funding lawsuits to defend liberty. And yes, even funding politicians, like political parties need money for campaigning and stuff. You know, like politicians have consultancy groups that work with, right? Like how many people are hiring those consultancy groups? Just one example, right? But if you don't pay so that your freedom gets defended, it's going to get restricted. It is what it is, right? Because like the other side, they also have the ideological argument. Like there are people that vote for them or support them or pay for them simply because they agree ideologically. But there's also like the business factor. Like there are businesses and there are people interested that this stuff happens, right? Like there are, for instance, the Muslim community, like they have very strong advocates and people that are representing Islamic interests in the United Kingdom. And they're well funded. Are there people on the other side? Like, what is the funding on the other side to prevent legislation like this from passing? Think about it. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in my comment section. Take care.